Lily halts before the burning barn, appalled that a wild bobcat remains inside the scorching chaos. Her pulse spikes when she glimpses what it's guarding, and the revelation leaves her trembling. A fiery glow lit the night sky over Pinecrest Valley, the kind of piercing orange that turned dark horizons into ominous warning flares. Long before sirens could slice through the quiet, a frantic call had gone out from the old Miller farm. Flames danced and crackled inside the massive wooden barn, sending billows of black smoke rolling into the starless heavens. It was a structure that had stood for nearly a century, a proud testament to generations of work and perseverance. But tonight, it was under siege by a fire so intense that even the bravest among the volunteer crew hesitated at the threshold. Firefighter Lily Parker had seen her fair share of barn blazes. At 29, she'd faced down raging infernos in warehouses, forest cabins, and even a church. Yet there was something about the Miller farm that set her on edge. This barn was part of local history. Children from nearby schools came every spring to see the baby goats and calves that found shelter behind its aged walls. Knowing the significance of the place, Lily felt a personal twinge of urgency to salvage what she could. Her partner, Caleb Michaels, stood at her side, his expression resolute. As they advanced toward the entrance, the heat pressed against their gear with almost physical force. Amid the roar of fire and the frantic shouts of fellow firefighters, a strange sound penetrated Lily's consciousness. It was a guttural hiss, more primal than the panicked cries of livestock that had been guided to safety moments earlier. She glanced around, certain she was imagining things, but then she saw it, two luminous eyes reflecting the firelight. They belonged to a bobcat perched on a splintered beam inside the barn, refusing to budge despite the surging flames. Its tufted ears lay flat against its skull and its spotted coat quivered with tension. At first, Lily assumed the wildcat was simply trapped. She'd rescued dogs, cats, and even a frantic raccoon in her firefighting career, so the presence of a bobcat didn't completely surprise her. What did unnerve her was the way the animal refused any attempt to shoo it outside. Whenever a firefighter approached, the bobcat stood its ground, hissing and swiping the air. There was no bounding dash for freedom, no frantic attempt to escape. It was as if the creature had chosen to remain in the inferno, even as clouds of sparks rained down from the collapsing rafters overhead. "What's it doing?" Caleb shouted through his protective mask. Embers scattered past them, and the roar of burning hay made every word feel distant. Lily tried to inch closer, her boots crunching on flaming debris. "It won't leave," she called back. "We need to get it out before the barn caves in." From outside, the property's owner, Frank Miller, paced anxiously in the yard. His frightened horses snorted in their makeshift corral, unsettled by the chaos. Lily could see the reflection of the flames dancing in Frank's tear-filled eyes. This farm was his family's entire livelihood. The livestock had been ushered out, but every second was precious. The barn's wooden framework groaned ominously, threatening to collapse if the flames were not subdued. Yet Lily couldn't ignore the bobcat. In these small rural towns, compassion for animals ran deep, and every life mattered, even one as wild and formidable as this. When she got within 10 feet of the bobcat, Lily felt the intense heat wash over her. Her gear, designed to repel flames, was still no match for the scorching environment that threatened to sap her energy. The bobcat stared at her, eyes wide and strangely resolute, as though challenging her to come any closer. Most wild animals would flee from a burning structure. Why wasn't this one running for its life? A deafening creak echoed through the barn as part of the loft gave way, sending a plume of fiery debris crashing down. Sparks erupted, swirling in the oppressive air. Lily shielded her face, trying to keep her balance. The bobcat leapt onto another beam, nimble even in the chaos, then resumed its watchful stance. It seemed determined, almost purposeful in how it clung to a specific area near the rear of the barn. ignoring every chance at escape. Outside, the rest of the fire crew fought to contain the blaze. Water hoses blasted the walls, steam hissing as the cold night air collided with the intense heat. Lily's radio crackled with orders to pull back. Sections of the roof were close to collapsing. But she couldn't just abandon the creature to the flames. Something about its unwavering presence tugged at her instincts. She had seen animals behave oddly during disasters, but never had she witnessed a wild predator adamantly refusing rescue. With each passing second, the barn's skeleton weakened. Smoke thickened, swirling in angry black curls that stung Lily's eyes. Still, she pushed forward, clutching her flashlight in one hand and a halogen bar in the other. She needed to coax the bobcat out, or carry it if she had to. But as she approached the center of the barn, following the cat's movements deeper inside, Lily realized the bobcat was guarding something. The realization twisted in her gut. Could there be offspring hidden in a corner? She'd heard stories of mother bobcats stashing their kittens in unsuspecting spots. If that was the case, the cat's refusal to leave made a terrible kind of sense. No mother would flee without protecting her young. Lily's heart pounded faster. The entire building could collapse at any moment. If there truly were kittens in here, every second counted. She radioed Caleb, breath strained. "I think it's got babies in here. We have to check the back stalls." She coughed against the smoke as she forced each word out. The swirling ash made it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Caleb's voice crackled in return. "This structure's about to go. We have orders to get out." Lily steeled her resolve. She had to make a split-second decision. The moral weight of leaving helpless creatures behind pressed down on her. She remembered all the reasons she joined the volunteer squad in the first place, to save those who couldn't save themselves, whether they walked on 2 legs or 4. Before her eyes, the bobcat mewed, a pitiful, raspy sound entirely at odds with its normally fierce demeanor. It was enough to break Lily's heart. She forged onward, fighting the blaze as best she could. Flames licked at the wooden beams overhead, sending showers of sparks across the barn floor. A muffled crash outside signaled that part of the roof was caving, and the horrifying possibility that the back exit might already be blocked. Lily knew she was risking her own life for a wild animal that might never trust her, but something deep inside pushed her on. It was about doing what was right, even when no one would blame her for retreating. Just when she thought she could go no further, her flashlight beam landed on a small recess in the barn's corner. Amid the swirling haze, she saw what could only be tiny, huddled shapes. Then everything seemed to happen at once. The bobcat darted toward that shadowy alcove, letting out a piercing cry. Lily's vision blurred with heat and sweat, and a wave of dizziness forced her to brace against a half-burned support post. She heard fresh orders over the radio, voices urgently insisting everyone evacuate, but Lily couldn't tear her eyes away from the sight of the bobcat standing defiantly, tail slashing, as the inferno raged around them. It was no longer just about an animal's stubbornness. A maternal resolve filled the cat's every movement, a primal determination that demanded a miracle in a place where none should be possible. In that moment, Lily felt tears burn at the edges of her eyes, mingling with the smoke. This bobcat was no mindless creature. It was a mother refusing to abandon her offspring in the face of certain danger. The heartbreak and courage in that single act made Lily's chest tighten with empathy. She had to find a way to save them all. Before we discover the truth of what those firefighters find and why it brings them to tears, please remember that there are stories of courage happening around us every day. If you feel moved by real-life heroism and the unbreakable bonds of survival, stay with us. The next part of this tale will reveal the choice that changes everything for Lily, for the crew, and for a family of bobcats caught between life and death. Lily pressed herself flat against the smoldering wall, her mind racing with potential escape routes as sparks rained down in fiery arcs. She could taste the acrid smoke in the back of her throat, feel the dense heat beating against her protective suit. The bobcat let out another raspy cry, glancing from Lily to that dark corner where small, trembling silhouettes were unmistakable. One thought pulsed through Lily's mind. They're just babies. Her heart pounded as she realized that the mother bobcat's refusal to leave was rooted in something far more powerful than fear. It was pure maternal instinct, and Lily couldn't ignore it, even if the barn was moments away from collapsing. Forced to act quickly, she radioed Caleb and the rest of the team. "I'm going after them." She could almost picture the alarm spreading across his face when he heard her decision. The radio crackled with warnings. "Evacuate now." "It's too dangerous." But Lily didn't budge. She sidled closer to the huddle of kittens, feeling her way along the side of a charred stall. Each step crunched over burning debris. Ahead, the mother bobcat stood guard with her tail lashing in wide arcs, a living barrier between her offspring and the raging inferno. One look at the fragile shapes in the corner told Lily these weren't newborns, perhaps a few weeks old at most, eyes open yet still unsteady on their feet. Their spotted coats glowed under the flickering orange light, and they cried weakly, pinned in place by the intense heat. With every second, the smell of smoke intensified, and Lily noticed the rafters overhead glowing bright with hidden embers. A single collapsed beam could seal their fate. Yet the mother bobcat wouldn't budge, her growls echoing over the roar of flames. Despite her training, Lily had never come this close to a wild bobcat. Domestic cats frightened by fires were challenge enough, but a protective mother in a blaze was something else entirely. She raised both hands slowly, palms facing outward, trying to project calm. "We're not the enemy," she whispered, though her voice was muffled by her respirator mask. "Let me help you." The mother hissed, showing teeth that glinted in the firelight. Smoke blurred the world around them, painting everything in shades of red and gray. Behind Lily, the barn shuddered. She heard someone yell her name, but it sounded distant, like a voice at the end of a tunnel. Her eyes flicked upward just in time to see a chunk of timber crash down not 10 feet away, sending sparks skating across the dirt floor. The kittens flattened themselves against the wall, mewling in terror. The mother bobcat bristled, ready to lunge at anything that ventured closer. Even if Lily somehow corralled the kittens, how could she persuade the mother to trust her? The tension was suffocating, layered over the constant threat of complete collapse. In that moment of indecision, she remembered her father's words from years ago when she first volunteered as a firefighter. In the thick of things, it's not just about procedures, it's about heart. Sometimes that's all that stands between life and loss. Heart was exactly what she needed now. She unclipped the small, handheld flashlight from her jacket and flicked the beam toward the kittens, illuminating their terrified faces. Then, moving as slowly as possible, Lily pulled a spare turnout blanket from her gear. It was meant to protect firefighters from radiant heat, but maybe, just maybe, it could also shield these little ones. Her eyes never left the mother bobcats. Step by step, Lily eased forward, trying not to trigger an attack. She was keenly aware that even in her gear, one well-aimed swipe could rake across her visor or gloves. "It's okay," she murmured in the gentlest voice she could muster. "I'm just going to get your babies out, then you can follow." Whether it was the low, soothing tone or sheer luck, the bobcat held position instead of lunging. It was still bristling, ears flattened, but that single moment of hesitation gave Lily the opening she needed. She slid the blanket closer, maneuvering it into a makeshift pouch behind the kittens. The heat on her neck was unbearable, and the swirling smoke made her eyes water. Yet she pressed on, scooping the shivering forms into the protective fold. The mother bobcat snarled, raising a paw, But Lily spoke again, soft, pleading, as if she could reason with an animal that had every right to mistrust her. "I won't hurt them, I promise." This time the bobcat stepped back, never taking those piercing eyes off Lily. It was enough. Quickly, Lily secured the kittens and drew them against her chest. Now for the hardest part, persuading the mother to leave. Through the thick haze, Lily caught a glimpse of bright flames tearing across the barn roof. The entire structure was a heartbeat away from caving. The hallway leading back outside was blocked by scattered debris, and she'd have to detour around the far side where the old hayloft door might still be accessible. Clutching her precious bundle, she beckoned to the bobcat. "Come on," she cried, voice hitching with urgency. The bobcat hesitated for half a second, long enough for Lily's stomach to knot in fear. Then, defying the scorching air and the falling embers, the animal sprang forward. It bounded past Lily with astonishing agility, halting a yard away as if to make sure Lily was following. Courage surged through Lily. The mother bobcat was leading the escape, choosing trust in the face of life-threatening peril. Together, they zigzagged through pockets of flame, stumbling over splintered boards and sidestepping columns of glowing embers. Every so often, the cat would turn her head, ensuring Lily and the kittens were still behind her. Smoke stung Lily's lungs. She coughed sharply, eyes streaming, forcing herself to focus on the dancing silhouette of the bobcat. If that dim shape vanished, she'd lose her guide and likely her path to freedom. The barn groaned, and another beam collapsed somewhere in the back, creating an explosion of sparks that lit the gloom like tiny fireflies. The flames surged, nearly cutting off the final stretch of open floor. Despite the searing pain in her legs and shoulders, Lily charged forward, trusting the animal's instincts. She could feel the kittens squirming inside the folded blanket, their frantic movements a reminder of how fragile every life was at that moment. Finally, she spotted the tall double doors at the far side. They stood partially ajar, smoke pouring outward. Caleb and two other firefighters were silhouetted against a wall of orange light, hoses aimed into the blaze. When Caleb saw Lily emerge, he shouted something she couldn't make out. Relief washed over his face as he motioned them through, and Lily staggered into the night air, chest heaving. Instantly, she fell to her knees, clutching the kittens. The mother bobcat bolted out seconds later, stopping just short of the cluster of firefighters. She spun around, panting, eyes wide with panic at the pandemonium. Every muscle in Lily's body felt like it was on fire, but she forced herself upright, still cradling the small forms in her arms. She needed to get them a safe distance away from the smoldering chaos. "Over here," she rasped to her teammates, heading for a clear patch of grass near one of the trucks. Caleb reached out to help her. The moment he saw the kittens, a startled expression flashed across his face. "You went in for bobcats?" His tone was part disbelief, part grudging admiration. Lily nodded, unable to form coherent words, her throat raw from smoke inhalation. Behind them, the inferno continued to rage. The fire was far from extinguished, but the focus now shifted to controlling it, preventing the blaze from spreading to other structures on the Miller property. Exhausted, Lily lowered the kittens onto a blanket someone had spread across the grass. Their tiny bodies trembled, but they were alive. A deep sense of relief mixed with the pounding adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She peeled off her gloves and gently ran her hand over the nearest kitten's spotted back. Its heartbeat fluttered against her palm like a frantic bird. Even though it was a wild animal, it needed comfort just as much as any domesticated pet. Suddenly, a collective gasp rose from the crew. Lily looked up and saw that the mother bobcat, still hovering near the edge of the driveway, was watching them closely. Flames crackled, lighting the night sky behind her, but the cat's focus was on those tiny bundles of fur. Her ears twitched. She was spattered with soot, her paws blackened from sprinting through charred debris. And yet she made no move to run away, as if torn between fear of the firefighters and the instinct to protect her offspring. For a moment, nobody spoke. The swirling red and blue lights of the engines reflected off the Bobcat's eyes, giving them an otherworldly glow. Lily could feel a lump forming in her throat. She'd witnessed barn fires before, but nothing had ever struck her like this moment. The raw maternal bond in that animal was almost palpable. The sight of the mother bobcat standing in the open, refusing to retreat into the darkness, filled Lily with awe. It was as though the cat sensed how close she'd come to losing her family, and that she owed her kitten's survival to these humans she would normally avoid at all costs. Lily swallowed hard, realizing she was on the verge of tears. She'd saved animals in the line of duty, but never had she seen such loyalty, such unwavering devotion, in the face of lethal danger. It was as if a silent truce had formed between them, bridging the gap between hunter and helper. The bobcat was free to vanish into the woods at any moment, yet she lingered, torn between caution and some elusive connection. Only then did Lily notice that her fellow firefighters were equally moved. Even the stoic, long-time veterans among them appeared spellbound. Caleb cleared his throat. He paused, apparently unsure how to finish his sentence, as if any sudden movement might break the fragile spell. Lily nodded, blinking back the moisture in her eyes. She could still smell smoke in her hair, still feel the heat clinging to her skin. But for now, everyone just stood there, staring at a wild mother who refused to leave, overwhelmed by gratitude, defiance, or perhaps both. In the aftermath of the barn's evacuation, a hush fell that felt out of place amid the raging flames. Lily stood transfixed, one arm cradling the tiny kittens, the other leaning against Caleb for balance. Neither of them could tear their eyes away from the mother bobcat. A layer of ash dusted her fur, and her tail twitched as though she were deciding whether to vanish into the night or draw closer to her rescued offspring. The air was thick with conflicting energies, the urgency of the fire crew working to contain the blaze, and the profound moment of stillness shared between the wildcat and the humans who had saved her family. The barn crackled in the background, its wooden beams collapsing bit by bit. A fresh wave of firefighters brandishing hoses and protective shields rushed to create a perimeter. Water arced through the air, hissing in contact with the searing flames. Frank Miller hovered by the corral, tears streaking his soot-stained face. His farm, a legacy passed down through generations, was on the brink of total loss. Yet he watched Lily, Caleb, and the bobcat with a sort of reverent disbelief, as though sensing that something bigger than the fire itself was unfolding on his land. Lily finally exhaled, pressing a hand to her chest in an effort to calm her racing heart. Her arms trembled from the strain of carrying the kittens, who squirmed with ever-weakening cries. They needed a safe haven, immediate warmth and protection. She glanced at Caleb, who met her gaze with a silent nod. At that very moment, the mother bobcat stepped forward. Her posture was guarded, but she crept with deliberate care, each paw placed firmly in the grass as if testing whether it was truly safe to come closer. In all her years of volunteer service, Lily had never felt so emotionally overwhelmed. Yes, she had fought to save people, pets, and property, but this was a wild creature, a mother refusing to abandon her young. Tears gathered behind Lily's visor, fueled by a mixture of relief and heartbreak. She realized she was witnessing something exceedingly rare, trust forming between a wild predator and the humans who had risked their lives for her babies. When the mother bobcat finally stood just a few feet away, she crouched, ears angled back, nose twitching. It struck Lily that the cat was caught between gratitude and instinctual fear, uncertain how to respond now that her kittens were out of immediate danger. Lily dared not reach out. Instead, she lowered her eyes, trying to appear as unthreatening as possible, heart pounding so loudly she wondered if the bobcat could hear it. Caleb, still gripping the handle of the hose in his other hand, cleared his throat. "We should get these little ones examined," he whispered. "They could be dehydrated, maybe suffering from smoke inhalation." Lily nodded, carefully setting the kittens down on a fresh patch of blanket that someone had laid on the grass to treat minor injuries. One of the kittens let out a feeble squeak, and the mother bobcat tensed, then padded closer, each step more certain than the last. Embers from the barn spiraled upward, casting flickers of orange against the night sky. Lily felt sweat trickling down her temples. Her breathing was still labored from the intense heat and exertion. She lifted her mask to gulp fresh air, eyes never leaving the bobcat. In a soft voice, she turned to Caleb. "Maybe we can coax her into the empty animal trailer," she suggested, pointing to a small livestock trailer parked near the corral. "We can keep them together until someone from Wildlife Rescue gets here." Frank Miller, overhearing this, approached. Though his expression was one of despair for his burning barn, there was a spark of admiration in his eyes for what Lily and Caleb had accomplished. "I'll back the trailer right over," he said hoarsely. "Doubt I can save the barn, but maybe we can keep that family safe." Moments later, the dull rumble of an engine announced that Frank had managed to move the trailer closer. Lily motioned for Caleb to grab an unoccupied blanket from one of the medical kits. This time, Lily draped the larger blanket over her shoulders and knelt down, extending its edge in the mother bobcat's direction. She hoped the cat would recognize it as a safe barrier rather than a threat. Slowly, Lily began to crawl backward, guiding the kittens and inviting the mother to follow. A crack split the night air like thunder. One of the barn's central support beams broke away, collapsing onto a lower roof section with a resounding crash. Firefighters cursed under their breath, redoubling their efforts to contain the blaze. Their silhouettes danced against a wall of flame. Lily forced herself not to look back. She needed to trust that her fellow crew members would handle the fire. Her job in that critical moment was to protect these animals. With surprising compliance, the mother bobcat advanced, never letting the kittens out of her sight. Each time one of them mewled, her ears pricked forward with concern. Lily could hardly believe her own eyes. She'd expected the bobcat to snatch the kittens and bolt into the woods. Instead, she seemed to sense that her best chance of safety lay with the very humans she had every natural reason to fear. Finally, Lily and Caleb reached the trailer. Frank had opened the door wide, and straw had been hastily scattered on the floor inside. Lily eased the kittens onto the straw, then coaxed them under the protective curve of the big blanket. The mother bobcat stood in the trailer's doorway, tail flicking in agitation, letting out a low, rolling growl. Lily froze, not wanting to agitate her further. Would the cat turn and flee, or would she commit to this uncertain refuge? In one swift motion, the bobcat stepped inside. She brushed past Lily and circled the kittens, sniffing them intently. The babies responded by huddling closer, no doubt comforted by the familiar scent of their mother. Lily and Caleb inched backward, maintaining a respectful distance. At last, Lily gave a small gesture to Frank, who gently swung the trailer door until it latched, leaving enough of a gap for air to flow inside. A wave of emotion crashed over Lily the moment the latch clicked. Exhaustion, adrenaline, relief, and lingering fear all melded into one powerful surge. Caleb caught sight of her trembling hand and slipped an arm around her shoulders. "You did good," he murmured, voice thick with feeling. In the background, water still battered the remains of the barn, which had become a skeletal framework spitting plumes of smoke into the dark. For several long seconds, Lily couldn't speak. Her mind replayed the frantic search through flames, the moment she'd scooped up those helpless kittens, and the unwavering eyes of the mother bobcat as she followed them out of certain doom. She felt tears sliding down her cheeks, burning hot against her smoke-stained skin. She didn't bother to wipe them away. She'd never believed until tonight that a wild creature could hold such steadfast faith in human intervention. Just then, the fire chief approached, panting heavily. He eyed the trailer, then turned to Lily with palpable relief. "You got them out." It wasn't a question. He reached for Lily's shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. "We had no idea if you'd make it. You were in there too long." Lily tried to muster a smile. "They're safe now," she whispered. "All of them." By the time the flames were finally subdued, dawn had begun to streak the horizon with pale, tentative light. The firefighters, weary beyond measure, sat on crates and tailgates, sipping water while paramedics checked them for smoke inhalation. Lily, ankles sore and back aching, found a moment to lean against the side of the trailer. She could hear soft rustling inside, an occasional hiss, the faintest sound of the kitten's cries, and the mother bobcat's low chuff. They were alive. That alone felt like a miracle worth celebrating. Caleb sidled up beside her, handing her a water bottle. He had tears staining the corners of his own eyes, though he tried to hide them behind a faint grin. Lily nodded her thanks and took a long drink. "I can't believe she trusted us," she said at last, voice quiet. "Or that I actually managed to coax them out without her taking my head off." He chuckled. "I've seen a lot of remarkable things in this job, but nothing quite like tonight." For a moment they let silence settle around them, watching as the first rays of morning light touched the scorched remains of the barn. Frank Miller was talking to the fire chief, likely about assessing the damage and salvaging what little remained. A sudden movement inside the trailer caught Lily's attention. She peered through a narrow opening and saw the mother bobcat adjusting her position over the kittens. One of them poked its tiny head out from the covering of straw, eyes wide with curiosity despite having survived a raging inferno just hours before. Lily's breath hitched. She realized she was witnessing a second miracle. Even after all they'd been through, these wild creatures displayed resilience beyond belief. Life found a way to hold on, especially when buoyed by acts of compassion in the midst of chaos. Caleb exhaled slowly. "We'll need to call wildlife rehab or animal control. They'll know what to do." He paused, glancing at Lily. "But I guess the hardest part might be letting them go when the time comes." Lily reached through the gap in the trailer, careful to keep her hand away from the bobcat's reach. "Somehow," she said softly, "I think that's the way it's supposed to be." They both fell quiet again, overwhelmed by the weight of what had transpired. In the distance, the smoldering remains of the barn hissed as water continued to drench the last pockets of heat. It felt like the end of something monumental and the beginning of a shared understanding between humans and the silent guardians of the wild. The mother bobcat had refused to flee a blazing building, all for the sake of protecting her young. Lily had risked her life to rescue them, driven by the same fierce devotion. And now, in the cool morning air, they stood at a crossroads, united by a bond forged in fire. Sunrise unfolded gently over Pinecrest Valley, painting the sky with a palette of lavender and pale gold. The firefighters, exhausted from hours of relentless work, exchanged weary nods while gathering up equipment. Some prepared to head back to the station, while others lingered to assist Frank Miller in salvaging what was left of the farm. Lily perched on an overturned bucket near the livestock trailer, her gaze drifting toward the charred barn ruins. She could still feel the heaviness in her chest, a mixture of sorrow for the Miller family's loss and awe at the improbable rescue she had just witnessed. Inside the trailer, the bobcat lay with her kittens nestled against her belly, their tiny forms barely visible under her coat. Lily found herself listening intently for the smallest noise, braced for signs of distress, but what she heard was surprisingly peaceful. The soft, purr-like rumble that mother bobcats sometimes use to soothe their young. It was a sound so gentle and unexpected that it tugged at Lily's heart, intensifying the emotion that had been building ever since she pulled the kittens from the inferno. Caleb returned from a conversation with the fire chief. He offered Lily a fresh bottle of water and slumped onto a nearby hay bale with a sigh. "Animal control's on their way," he reported, pushing a few stray locks of hair away from his soot-streaked forehead. "They'll call the state wildlife office too. This is not your everyday cat-in-a-tree situation." Lily nodded. The rigors of the night were catching up to her. Sweat dried into a film of salt on her cheeks, and her shoulders ached from hauling hoses and prying beams. The enormity of it all still hadn't fully settled. "Poor things," she said, glancing toward the trailer. "Can you imagine trying to escape a blaze like that with newborns?" Caleb's gaze followed hers. "Wild animals handle danger in ways we can't fully grasp," he answered, voice quiet. "All I know is, you did something special in there. Not everyone would have risked it." A memory of the raging inferno flashed through Lily's mind. She saw the mother bobcat on that beam, refusing to budge. The moment replayed in slow motion, laced with terror and adrenaline. "We both did," she murmured, not wanting to accept all the credit. "You covered me, cleared debris, even when it went against protocol." He offered a tired shrug. "Sometimes you can't follow the rule book. You follow your gut." Before Lily could respond, headlights cut through the smoky dawn. A battered white pickup truck rattled onto the property, bearing the logo of the Pinecrest County Animal Control. Out stepped two officers, one tall and lanky, the other short and stout, each sporting matching reflective vests. The taller officer waved, a concerned look etched into his features. "Heard you got a wild bobcat in a trailer," he called out, approaching with measured steps. "That's right," Lily replied, standing to greet them. "She's in there with her litter. The barn went up in flames and we pulled them out just in time." The shorter officer, whose name tag read Garcia, peered through the small gap in the trailer's side. He whistled softly. "A mother and kittens, huh? Must have been quite a scene. How tame is she? Any signs of aggression?" Lily shook her head. "She's wary, but cooperative, I guess. It's like she realizes we mean no harm. We haven't tried to move her since getting her inside." Garcia exchanged a look with his partner, then unzipped a large duffel bag. "We've got a catch pole, nets, tranquilizers if needed. But if she's not outright attacking, we might just transport her as is to the rescue center. They have the facilities to handle injured or displaced wildlife." A jolt of protectiveness flared in Lily's chest. The idea of sedating the bobcat felt wrong, though she knew it might be necessary to keep everyone safe. She turned back to the trailer, heart pounding. The mother bobcat peeked through the gap, ears perked at the new voices. "She's been through enough," Lily said softly. "But you're right, the center can help. She probably inhaled a lot of smoke, and who knows if she's got burns or other injuries." The taller officer, Redding, according to his name tag, approached the trailer door carefully. "We'll do what we can," he assured Lily. "The state wildlife team has a veterinarian on standby. We'll get the whole family examined." Drawing in a deep breath, Lily forced herself to step aside. The time had come to relinquish control to those who specialized in wildlife emergencies. She'd done what she could. Now the experts needed to take over. Her heart thudded, though, as she watched the officers set up a mobile kennel with high walls, a top hatch, and a secure locking system. The bobcat was about to be transferred from one enclosure to another, and Lily worried how this fierce mother would react. Garcia and Redding approached the trailer door, net poles and a tranquilizer dart at the ready. The firefighters gathered at a respectful distance, not wanting to spook the wild cat by crowding. Silence settled again, a tension-filled lull. Even the crackling embers of the barn seemed momentarily subdued. Lily gripped Caleb's arm, unconsciously holding her breath. With steady, deliberate movements, Garcia opened the trailer. The bobcat hissed, her eyes glowing with alarm. She shielded her kittens beneath her, body low to the straw, ears pinned against her head. Redding spoke softly, words too low for Lily to hear. He moved slowly, holding a thick blanket like a shield, inching closer. The tension in the air was palpable. A single wrong move could cause the bobcat to charge or injure herself. Suddenly, Garcia stepped forward, brandishing the net with practiced ease. In one fluid motion, he managed to guide the mother cat into the mobile kennel. There was a flurry of movement, a flash of claws, a shriek that set everyone's nerves on edge, then the metallic click of the kennel door sliding into place. The mother bobcat let out an enraged yowl, but almost immediately she turned her attention back to the kittens, who were swiftly gathered by Redding and placed in the kennel beside her. Within seconds, the bobcat had calmed, pressing herself protectively against her offspring. Lily let out a trembling sigh, relief washing over her. The officers secured the kennel hatch, then signaled that the transfer was complete. "We'll get them over to the rescue center now," Garcia said, locking everything carefully. "The fire department did one heck of a job. You might have saved all their lives tonight." She gave a small nod, feeling a swirl of pride and sadness. She was grateful the bobcat family was safe, but the finality of handing them off left a strange emptiness inside her. An image flashed through her mind of the mother's eyes locked on hers in the barn, a silent plea for help that had overridden every instinct telling the bobcat to flee. Though the details would fade with time, Lily doubted she would ever forget that look. As Garcia and Redding loaded the kennel into their truck, Caleb handed Lily a towel to wipe the ash and soot from her face. "You okay?" he asked quietly, eyes full of concern. She nodded. "Yeah, it's just that bond she has with her kittens. It's so strong. I can't believe we almost lost them all." She paused, swallowing hard. "I've never felt so powerless, but at the same time, I've never been more certain I had to do something." Caleb didn't answer right away. He simply placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Their job was fraught with tragedy and risk, yet sometimes they were granted moments like this, moments where compassion bridged the gap between species, forging a bond that transcended the chaos. Lily knew the memory would stay with her forever. Down the driveway, Frank Miller stood leaning against his tractor, the weariness etched into every line of his face. The barn smoldered behind him, now only a skeletal frame. Yet when he caught Lily's eye, he raised a hand in thanks. She walked over and patted his shoulder lightly. "I'm so sorry about your barn," she said, voice choked with sympathy. "If there's anything we can do..." Frank managed a shaky smile. "You've already done more than enough. You and the crew saved my animals and that bobcat family. That's a blessing money can't buy." A car horn sounded, drawing their attention to the animal control truck. Garcia stuck his head out the window. "We'll be in touch with updates," he called, tipping his cap. Then the truck rumbled away, carrying its precious cargo toward the rescue center. Lily's heart clenched, torn between relief and worry. Would the bobcat recover fully? Would the kittens adapt? She trusted the specialists, but the questions still nagged at her. Nearby, the sun rose higher, illuminating the weary faces of firefighters packing up hoses and equipment. Some exchanged quiet, reflective words. Others sat hunched, staring blankly at the scorched ground. They'd prevented the fire from spreading, but the barn was gone. Lily glanced at Caleb, who looked just as emotionally drained as she felt. There was so much loss here, so many memories turned to ash, and yet that heartbreak stood beside a small miracle. Taking one last look at the blackened ruins, Lily whispered a silent promise. She'd do whatever it took to ensure that Mother Bobcat and her kittens had a fighting chance at life, just as she had done inside that burning barn. No matter how often tragedy struck, she refused to give up on the small sparks of hope that emerged, even in the darkest hours. By early afternoon, Lily and Caleb were back at the fire station, too restless to sleep despite their exhaustion. Word of the unusual rescue had already spread through Pinecrest. Neighbors dropped by with offers of support for Frank Miller, while curious onlookers asked for details about the mother Bobcat and her kittens. Lily found herself fielding questions she never anticipated, like whether the Bobcat had attacked or shown gratitude once freed. She tried to explain the delicate balance between a wild animal's fear and its instinct to protect its young, but most people just shook their heads in wonder. Outside, the sun beat down on scorched earth, a stark contrast to the previous night's chaos. Lily stood by the station's bay door, gazing at the distance where farmland stretched into gentle hills. A persistent scent of smoke clung to her gear, a sharp reminder of the tragedy they'd faced. Yet in the midst of destruction, they'd saved more lives than anyone believed possible. It gave her a glimmer of hope. Maybe not all was lost. She retreated into the locker room to rinse off and attempt a moment of quiet. Hot water cascaded over her shoulders, and she closed her eyes, replaying every moment from the previous night. The barn's collapsing beams, the kitten's tiny cries, the mother Bobcat's unwavering stance in the face of certain danger. She remembered the surge of emotion she'd felt when their eyes locked, as if the cat was silently begging for help. Lily's chest constricted anew, and she had to steady herself against the shower tile to keep from trembling. Not long after, a knock sounded at the women's locker room door. "Lily," Caleb called gently. "Got a phone call for you. It's the rescue center." She shut off the water, toweled off quickly, and dressed in a fresh uniform. Her pulse picked up. News about the Bobcat family, she hoped. She hurried out to the office phone and lifted the receiver. "Hello?" she said, trying to mask her impatience. "Hi, this is Adrienne Cole from Pinecrest Wildlife Rescue," a calm female voice responded. "I'm calling about the Bobcat and her kittens you helped save." Lily exhaled with relief. "Yes, thank you for getting in touch. How are they?" "Better than expected, but still in need of close monitoring," Adrienne replied. "The mother has minor burns on her hind paws, likely from running across hot debris. She also inhaled a lot of smoke, so she's on medication to reduce lung irritation. The kittens seem okay, just a bit underweight and dehydrated. I'd guess they're about 4 weeks old." A tiny smile tugged at Lily's lips. "That's good news, relatively speaking. Will they stay at your center until she heals?" "That's the plan," Adrienne said. "We've set them up in a large private enclosure away from noise and human traffic. She's a wild animal and we want to keep human interaction minimal, but we'll do all we can to help her recover." "I understand," Lily said, heart clenching. She felt an odd pang at the notion of not seeing the mother Bobcat and her kittens again. But truly, it was best for them to remain wary of people if they were to be released back into the wild. "I appreciate the update." Adrienne hesitated before adding, "I also wanted to let you know something. She's quite protective, but whenever we open the enclosure for feeding or medical checks, she doesn't display the kind of aggression we usually expect from an injured bobcat. It's as though she recognizes we're trying to help. I can't prove it, but we suspect your intervention last night set the tone." Lily felt warmth rise to her face. "I just did what anyone would have done in that situation." Adrienne laughed softly. "Well, not everyone would risk running into a collapsing barn for a bobcat and her kittens. You might sell yourself short, Lily, but trust me, what you did was remarkable." They said their goodbyes, and Lily hung up, lost in thought. She glanced at Caleb, who'd been hovering at a respectful distance. "They're okay," she told him, relief coloring her tone. "They'll need time, but they're alive." He gave a slow nod. "That's all that matters." For the rest of the day, Lily floated through her responsibilities in a haze of fatigue and lingering adrenaline. Every so often, when she closed her eyes, she saw the flash of orange flames and the intense, unblinking stare of the mother bobcat. By dusk, she'd managed to get away from the station, craving a moment of solitude. She drove out to the edges of Pinecrest Valley, where rolling fields of tall grass made the world feel wide and open. She parked at a scenic overlook near the county line, stepping onto a narrow path leading to a gently sloping hillside. Summer cicadas buzzed in the warm twilight, and the sky above shimmered with the first hints of stars. Lily inhaled the sweet smell of grass and wildflowers, trying to calm the swirl of emotions churning inside her. The events of the previous night had affected her in ways she hadn't expected, like she'd seen a side of nature's raw power and fragile beauty that couldn't be easily reconciled. A crackle of leaves behind her made her turn. Caleb had followed, hands stuffed into his pockets. His gaze swept over the horizon, then returned to Lily. "Figured you might need a friend," he said softly. Her shoulders relaxed. "I do." They walked together under the emerging constellations. Distant farm lights twinkled below. For a while they said nothing, content to let the hush of night speak for them. Eventually, Lily cleared her throat. "I never told you this, but I grew up on a farm a few counties over. We had an old barn, a lot like Frank Miller's. I used to sneak in there on winter nights to check on the animals, make sure they were warm enough." He looked at her profile, the starlight highlighting a faint tear track on her cheek. "Maybe that's why you couldn't leave that barn without saving them." She nodded, remembering the sense of responsibility she felt even as a child. "I know not everyone understands. They say it's just a wild animal or it's nature's way, but I couldn't bear to watch them die in front of me, especially knowing there was something I could do." Her voice quavered. Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing. I'll never forget the sight of you carrying those kittens, risking your own safety because you couldn't turn away. That's what makes you, you." They stood in companionable silence, listening to the murmur of a light breeze across the tall grass. Dusk deepened into full night, and a pale half-moon emerged, casting elongated shadows across the ground. Lily thought about the rescue center and the gentle caretaker's voice. She hoped the mother bobcat was settling in, licking her wounds while the kittens nursed, blissfully unaware of the next challenges life might hold for them. Eventually, Caleb stretched and glanced at his watch. "It's late," he murmured. "We should get some rest." They walked back to their vehicles, the sky overhead stretching infinite and mysterious. Lily realized with a pang of sadness that the hardest part of rescuing wild animals was often letting go, trusting that nature could take over once immediate danger had passed. Yet she also felt a swelling gratitude for having been part of something so profound. She might never again experience a connection that intense, a moment where life and death hung in the balance and one small act of compassion tipped the scale toward hope. In the following days, Pinecrest slowly returned to its usual pace. Neighbors launched a fundraiser to help Frank Miller rebuild his barn, with local carpenters and farmers pitching in. Lily spent any free minute she had gathering supplies for the rescue center: blankets, cans of special milk replacer for orphaned wildlife, and donations collected from those who felt inspired by the Bobcat story. Each trip to the center felt like a new revelation. She would arrive with supplies in hand, heart fluttering, hoping to catch a glimpse of the bobcat and her kittens through a viewing window. Adrian Cole always welcomed her with updates. "She's improving by the day. We've managed to treat her burns and she's breathing easier now. The kittens are putting on weight. In a few weeks we'll talk about next steps, maybe a larger enclosed habitat where they can learn essential survival skills." On one such visit, Lily dared to stand by the one-way glass that looked into the enclosure. She saw the mother bobcat stretched out, fur less singed than before, her tail draped protectively over the kittens, who tussled with each other in playful mock battles. Though the cat couldn't see her, Lily felt an odd connection, as if that night in the barn had permanently linked them. The mother raised her head, nostrils flaring, as if she sensed a familiar presence. Lily found herself pressing a hand gently to the glass, eyes misting at the sight. If all went as planned, the family would eventually return to the wild, the kittens old enough to fend for themselves. Lily swallowed a lump in her throat, understanding that she would likely never interact with them face to face again. Despite the pang of sorrow, she also felt a deep sense of rightness. They didn't belong in human spaces. Their place was under the open sky, roaming fields and forests, alive and free. She was just a brief stop on their journey, a guardian in their darkest hour. And that was enough. A week later, Lily found herself sitting on a hay bale in Frank Miller's stable, the one he'd converted into a makeshift barn after the fire. Fresh beams and new lumber lined the walls, a testament to the community's swift response in helping him rebuild. Though far from finished, the stable now sheltered the remaining animals, providing them a safe, if temporary, home. The smell of sawdust, hay, and the faint tang of old smoke still clung to the air. Lily's gaze drifted over the freshly cut boards, reminded of how fragile everything could be. Frank approached, wiping his forehead with a bandana. "Reckon we'll have the new barn fully raised by month's end," he said, a touch of optimism in his otherwise weary voice. "Never thought I'd see half the county pitching in like this." He paused, fiddling with a loose nail in a support beam. I wanted to thank you again, Lily. Folks keep asking about the Bobcat, if you've heard any news." She offered a reassuring smile. "They're recovering well. The mother's paws are healing, and the kittens have started exploring their enclosure. Adrian from the rescue center says that if everything goes smoothly, they'll transition into a more spacious habitat where the mother can teach them to hunt." Frank nodded slowly. "Good. Real good." His eyes clouded for a moment, recalling the night of the fire. Strange how something so terrible can have moments of grace in it. Never realized a wild creature could trust humans like that. Lily understood exactly what he meant. It still amazed her when she replayed that tense rescue in her mind. The mother Bobcat's eyes, her silent resolve, that incredible mutual understanding forged in the face of disaster. The memory carried a gravitas she couldn't fully articulate. Outside, hammering and the buzz of power tools echoed across the yard. Neighbors and volunteers bustled around piles of lumber, determined to rebuild what the flames had destroyed. Caleb stood on a ladder, helping align a rafter, sweat glistening on his brow. Lily marveled at how seamlessly everyone had come together. It made her feel less alone in the swirl of feelings left behind after the rescue. Later that afternoon, Lily drove out to the Wildlife Rescue Center with a few donated items in her trunk. She brought blankets, canned food for injured animals, and small toys the center sometimes used for orphaned creatures to reduce stress. Pulling up to the modest complex, a cluster of low buildings connected by walkways shaded by tall pines, she felt a surge of anticipation. Although she tried not to get too attached, part of her hoped for even a glimpse of the Bobcat family. Adrian greeted her at the gate, wearing worn jeans and a bright smile. "You're spoiling us," she teased, nodding toward the supplies. "The blankets are a godsend. We have 2 injured foxes right now, plus a handful of raccoons that were displaced by flooding up north." Lily followed her inside, passing pens filled with rehabilitating wildlife. A hawk with a bandaged wing, a doe recovering from a tangle with barbed wire, and an owl perched in a small wooden shelter. Adrian explained that while some animals would return to the wild, others, too injured or too accustomed to human care, might become educational ambassadors. Lily's heart twinged at the thought of creatures separated from their natural habitats, even if it was for their own good. They entered a side hallway leading to a special viewing room. Through a glass panel, Lily glimpsed the Bobcat enclosure again. It was larger than before, strewn with logs, branches, and hidden nooks that resembled a tiny slice of forest. The mother Bobcat lounged on a platform, tail draped gracefully over the edge. Her kittens, bigger now, scampered around, swiping at each other's tails and stumbling over tufts of grass. Seeing them so lively filled Lily with quiet joy. "They're doing great," Adrian remarked, following Lily's gaze. "Another week or two and we'll begin the next phase, introducing live prey in a controlled environment, seeing if the mother can teach them hunting skills. Our goal is to keep them as wild as possible." Lily nodded, pressing her palm lightly to the glass. "That's wonderful. Any sign of scarring from the burns on her paws?" Adrienne shook her head. "She was lucky. No permanent damage. We caught the burns in time, so they're healing nicely. Her lung capacity still isn't at 100%, but it's improving every day." A light rap on the door made them both turn. A man with a clipboard and a serious expression peered in. Dr. Kaminsky, the center's veterinarian. He stepped inside, adjusting his glasses. "Ms. Parker, right?" he asked, offering a curt handshake. "I've heard about your role in the rescue." Lily felt a mild flush of embarrassment. "I was just doing my job." He flipped through a few papers on his clipboard. "Well, you might be interested to know there's been debate in certain circles about whether it was wise to save a predator like a bobcat." Adrian's eyebrows shot up. "What do you mean, debate?" Dr. Kaminsky sighed. "Local ranchers have raised concerns. They're worried about livestock attacks if bobcats proliferate. Of course, we know bobcats pose minimal risk compared to larger predators, but rumors spread fast. A few folks have called the county, suggesting the bobcat should remain in captivity or even be relocated out of state. They argue it's safer for everyone." Lily felt her stomach drop. Her memory flickered back to the unwavering mother she'd risked her life for. The thought of confining that creature forever simply because she was a wild predator made Lily's fists clench. "That's not right," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "She's part of the ecosystem. Bobcats are rarely a threat to livestock. They mostly hunt small game." Adrian placed a reassuring hand on Lily's arm. "We're preparing data to present at the county meeting next month, evidence that releasing her back into suitable habitat won't pose a risk. But we need local support." Dr. Kaminsky nodded solemnly. "Emotion alone won't sway some of these ranchers. They want proof. We have to show that keeping a healthy bobcat in the wild is beneficial, not detrimental." Lily drew a slow breath, recalling Frank Miller's reaction after the fire. He too was a rancher, and yet he felt only gratitude for saving the bobcat's life. Maybe not all farmers were against predators. "What if Frank spoke at that meeting?" she suggested. "He's respected by the community, and he saw firsthand how that bobcat acted. He might change a few minds." A slow smile spread across Adrian's face. "That's a great idea. A voice from within the ranching community could make a huge difference." Dr. Kaminsky tapped the edge of his clipboard. "Exactly. If we can demonstrate that even landowners affected by the fire support the bobcat's release, it'll carry weight." Lily felt a rush of energy flood her system, as if she'd just been handed a new mission. Her protective instinct for the bobcat and her kittens flared all over again. She'd already risked her life in the barn to keep them safe. Now she was prepared to fight for their right to roam free. "I'll talk to Frank," she said firmly, "and anyone else who'll listen." They parted ways with Dr. Kaminsky, who hustled off to check on an injured mountain lion in another enclosure. Adrian led Lily back into the rescue center's lobby. There, Lily dropped off her supplies and signed a quick donation form. Her mind buzzed with the next steps, gathering stats on bobcat behavior, drafting a statement for the county meeting, convincing neighbors that these creatures weren't mindless killers. Before leaving, Lily cast one last glance at the enclosure window. The mother bobcat was up on all fours, nose in the air, as though she sensed Lily's presence, or perhaps an impending challenge that would dictate her family's future. Their gazes didn't meet directly, but Lily felt a renewed determination. She owed it to the creature who had trusted her in the flames, the one who had refused to abandon her kittens. No matter how many voices rose in opposition, Lily knew she wouldn't rest until that bobcat and her offspring had a fair chance at living wild. Stepping outside into the late afternoon light, Lily fished her phone out of her pocket. She dialed Frank's number, heart thumping with hope and nerves in equal measure. He answered on the second ring, still at the construction site. Without any hesitation, Lily explained what she'd just learned. As she spoke, the memory of the mother bobcat's resolute stare loomed large in her mind, a silent reminder of the bond that had formed amid smoke and embers. She made her plea, voice unwavering. Frank listened intently. "Count me in," he said at last. "I'll stand by you. After all, she stood by her babies in my barn, and you stood by her. The least I can do is help people see that we're not enemies, us and the bobcats. We can learn to share the land." Lily closed her eyes, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Frank," she whispered, hanging up. As she slid her phone into her back pocket, the evening sun draped Pinecrest Valley in a golden haze. On a day like this, the farmland looked endless, the rolling hills and open sky promising space enough for everyone, human and wild alike. And Lily promised herself that she would fight to keep it that way. Across the next few days, Pinecrest buzzed with talk of the upcoming county meeting, where the fate of the rescued bobcat and her kittens would be decided. At grocery stores and gas stations, folks traded opinions on whether predators belonged anywhere near farmland. Some recalled stories of cougars stalking livestock or coyotes snatching chickens, conflating those incidents with the threat of bobcats. Meanwhile, Lily and Frank worked tirelessly behind the scenes, determined to present a calm, evidence-based argument in favor of release. They collected data on bobcat diets, ranging habits, and documented cases where bobcats coexisted peacefully alongside ranches. Each fact they gathered felt like a small shield, a way to counter the growing fear that threatened to overshadow the beauty of what they had witnessed. One evening, Lily stopped by Frank's makeshift stable to pick up a binder of historical records detailing local wildlife sightings. Frank had highlighted every mention of bobcats for the past decade, complete with notes on how seldom they interacted with humans. As Lily flipped through the pages, she felt gratitude for his thoroughness. Each entry was another piece of evidence to bolster their case. In the back, he'd inserted newspaper clippings from years gone by, articles celebrating Pinecrest's natural heritage, praising the region's balanced ecosystem. Lily smiled at the headlines, imagining how proud the town must have been of its wildlife diversity. Now it seemed fear had crept in, overshadowing that sense of wonder with suspicion and doubt. Caleb joined them that night, bringing his own perspective as a firefighter who witnessed the bobcat's remarkable calm during the rescue. He recalled the eerie hush after the flames were contained, the mother bobcat standing guard as if acknowledging the help the humans had provided. Frank listened intently, nodding as Caleb spoke. "People respond to stories more than statistics," Frank murmured when Caleb finished. "We should make sure folks understand how that cat chose not to run, how she let Lily save her kittens. Facts are necessary, but sometimes a story hits the heart in ways numbers can't." It was decided then they would combine verifiable data with the gripping account of the barn rescue, hoping to touch both minds and hearts. In the following days, Lily contacted Adrienne at the rescue center to gather additional insights. Adrienne detailed how the bobcat's health continued to improve, and how the kittens were quickly learning to climb, pounce, and explore their enclosure. She also offered to speak at the meeting, explaining the rehabilitative process for predators. The more Lily learned, the stronger her conviction grew that these animals belonged back in the wild. Yet she couldn't ignore the murmurs of dissent simmering in town. A few ranchers she spoke to, longtime friends of Frank's, worried that one bobcat might soon become many, posing a threat to newborn livestock. Lily tried to allay their fears with facts about bobcat reproduction rates, but skepticism lingered. Finally, the day of the county meeting arrived. The assembly hall was surprisingly crowded, with folding chairs arranged in rows and a makeshift podium set up front. Officials from the county's wildlife department sat at a long table, folders and microphones ready. Lily felt butterflies in her stomach as she observed the range of expressions in the crowd, some curious, some hostile, others open-minded. Caleb stood beside her, offering a reassuring nod. "We'll just speak the truth," he whispered. Frank stood near the podium, flipping through a stack of papers with a thoughtful frown. Then, a gavel banged, calling the room to order. The council chair, a stern woman named Margaret Holmes, cleared her throat and introduced the first speaker. Adrienne stepped forward, her calm voice carrying through the microphone. She spoke of the rescue center's mission, outlining how predators were vital to keeping rodent and rabbit populations in check. "If we lose our bobcats," she explained, "we might gain an even larger pest problem." Then she cited the mother bobcat's gentle recovery, emphasizing that bobcats rarely target livestock unless severely pressured by habitat loss or illness. A few audience members murmured in response. Lily sensed both acceptance and lingering unease. When Adrian concluded, Dr. Kaminsky rose to present more clinical details. He described the limited risk factors and how routine prevention, such as fencing or guard animals, generally thwarted bobcat threats. Charts flashed on a screen showing stable bobcat numbers in the region. Next, Frank approached the podium, clearing his throat nervously. He was no polished speaker, but his earnestness shone through. "I lost my barn," he began, voice soft. "But I can rebuild. What I can't rebuild is a species that's pushed out of its homeland." He recounted the night of the fire, describing how Lily had emerged, clutching those kittens. "I'm a rancher," he said simply, "and I'm telling you, we can coexist. That cat never harmed my livestock. She just wanted to save her babies." His words resonated, a tangible hush settling over the audience. Some folks still wore skeptical frowns, but Lily noticed a stirring of empathy in many faces, including those of ranchers who once seemed set against the bobcat. At last, Lily took her turn. She set aside her notes, deciding to speak from the heart. "When I ran into that barn, I thought I was saving a scared animal. What I found was a mother determined and fearless, putting everything on the line for her young." She paused, glancing around. "I understand that fear makes us want to control what we don't understand. But let me ask, if we can't find compassion for creatures that share our land, what kind of community are we building?" Her voice trembled with emotion. She recounted the bobcat's unwavering gaze during the rescue, how the cat seemingly recognized that humans could be allies, not enemies. "That's a chance we can't throw away," she finished. Margaret Holmes scanned the room, then nodded. "We'll deliberate and announce our decision soon," she said. The meeting adjourned to a clamor of conversations. Lily's heart pounded. She had given everything, praying that truth, empathy, and understanding would triumph over fear's looming shadow. The county meeting ended with a restless buzz of speculation. Lily lingered near the stage, heart pounding, watching as ranchers, townspeople, and wildlife officials clustered into small groups to discuss what they'd just heard. She felt flushed with emotion after her speech, her throat tight. Caleb and Frank joined her, exchanging tense looks. There had been nods of approval from many in the crowd, but also more than a few doubtful faces. They wouldn't know for certain whether the council would rule in favor of releasing the Bobcat or sending her away until the final announcement. After a few minutes, Adrian appeared at Lily's side, eyes bright with cautious optimism. "I think you and Frank really struck a chord," she said softly. "Some folks who were on the fence seem more open now. If the council weighs community sentiment alongside the scientific facts, I'd bet they'll approve the release." Her hopeful tone gave Lily a fleeting sense of relief. She nodded, glancing around at people filtering out of the hall. Nearby, Dr. Kaminsky was in a quiet but intense conversation with Margaret Holmes, likely reiterating the medical reasons to set the mother Bobcat free. Frank let out a long breath. "I'll be honest, I've never spoken in public like that," he confessed, massaging the back of his neck. "But if it helps keep that cat and her babies in the wild, it was worth every bead of sweat." Lily patted his shoulder, gratitude shining in her eyes. She remembered how hesitant he'd seemed at first, unsure if he could advocate for a wild predator in front of neighbors who might condemn him for it. Now his speech might be the very thing that swayed the council's vote. They stepped outside into a warm twilight. The sun was dipping low behind the distant hills, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Lily inhaled deeply, savoring the fresh air after the stuffy confines of the meeting hall. "We did our best," she told Caleb, trying to inject confidence into her voice. "The rest is up to them." In her mind, she pictured the mother Bobcat perched in that rescue center enclosure, oblivious to the controversy raging among humans over her family's future. Lily promised herself that no matter the council's decision, she would keep advocating for what felt right. As they headed toward their vehicles, an older man with a weathered face and a baseball cap approached Frank. "Heard your speech," he said in a low drawl. Lily recognized him as Everett Jenkins, a longtime rancher with a reputation for being skeptical of conservation measures. He paused, fiddling with the brim of his hat. "I was all set to vote for shipping that cat out, but somehow you got me thinking. If you can rebuild your barn after what happened and still stand up for that animal, maybe we can figure out how to protect our cattle without banishing everything with claws." Frank seemed momentarily speechless. Then his face softened into a genuine smile. "I appreciate you saying that, Everett. We all share this land, you know. We just gotta find a balance." Everett mumbled his agreement before shuffling away, leaving Frank looking more hopeful than Lily had ever seen him. Caleb exhaled slowly. "That right there," he said quietly, "is a small victory." 3 days later, Lily was on shift at the fire station when she received the call that the council had made its decision. Her heart jumped to her throat, adrenaline spiking as she stepped into the dimly lit office and answered the phone. On the other end, Margaret Holmes sounded polite but reserved. "Ms. Parker, the county council has voted to allow the mother Bobcat and her kittens to remain under the care of Pinecrest Wildlife Rescue until they're ready for release. The final step is to identify a suitable release site, away from dense ranching areas, but still within their native range." Tears sprang to Lily's eyes, relief pouring through her. "Thank you," she managed, voice unsteady. "We'll do everything we can to ensure a smooth transition." Margaret cleared her throat, adding, "We expect monthly updates from the rescue center for the next year, just to confirm the Bobcat family isn't causing issues. But I believe we can find common ground." Lily promised to relay the message. Hanging up, she practically raced out of the office to share the news with Caleb, who broke into a wide grin. "We did it!" he exclaimed. Word spread rapidly. Adrian was thrilled and immediately began coordinating with wildlife experts about the upcoming relocation plan. Frank, for his part, volunteered part of his own property's wooded acreage if it helped keep the cats within their accustomed habitat, though the final decision would rest with the biologists. The sense of unity that blossomed in Pinecrest after the vote surprised even Lily. She realized that confronting a single bobcat's fate had opened deeper conversations about what it meant to coexist with wildlife, especially in a region known for agriculture. Meanwhile, at the rescue center, the mother bobcat and her kittens thrived. Lily visited whenever possible, peering through the observation window to see how quickly the youngsters were growing. They bounded over logs, wrestling each other with tiny but ferocious snarls, testing their emerging strength. The mother still moved with a slight limp on her right hind paw, but she was more alert and active than ever. Her coat had regained its healthy gloss, and her muscles rippled beneath the spotted fur. Sometimes Lily felt the cat's eyes shift toward the glass as though sensing a familiar presence. Lily would linger, captivated by the family's resilience. Late one afternoon, Adrienne pulled Lily aside. "It's almost time," she said, eyes dancing with excitement. "We've scouted a release site near the eastern ridge, about 10 miles from Frank's property. It's got a water source, dense cover, and minimal human activity. We'll move them in a soft release pen so the mother can adjust and teach her kittens to hunt real prey without immediate human interference." She explained how the soft release approach involved placing the bobcat family in a spacious, fenced enclosure that gradually allowed them to come and go. Once they showed confidence navigating the area, the enclosure would be dismantled, leaving them free to roam. Lily felt an odd mixture of elation and sadness. She had grown attached to the idea of them being safe at the center, but she knew they belonged out there, hidden among the undergrowth and pine trees, living as nature intended. The rescue had been a single chapter in their lives, and in her own. Now they were ready for the next part of their story, one where human intervention would fade into the background. On a crisp morning, Lily and Caleb joined Adrienne, Dr. Kaminsky, and a few volunteers at the rescue center to oversee the first step of the transfer. The center had prepared sturdy crates for the mother and each kitten, though catching them required tranquilizer darts to avoid panicking the animals. Lily felt her heart pound as she watched Dr. Kaminsky skillfully aim and fire at the mother bobcat from behind a barrier. The cat let out a surprised yowl, then staggered, blinking hard, before sinking into a quiet daze. The kittens, scattered by confusion, were gathered up using net poles. Each was sedated quickly to minimize stress. "Don't worry," Dr. Kaminsky told Lily, catching her anxious look. "The dosage is carefully measured. They'll be groggy, but no lasting harm." Lily nodded, exhaling. She stepped aside as staff gently loaded the bobcats into crates lined with straw. Even in sedation, the mother bobcat's chest rose and fell with steady breaths, a reassuring sign that she was stable. Lily found herself brushing a thumb over the crate's edge. "Hang in there," she whispered, memory flashing to the night of the barn fire. "You're almost free." The drive to the eastern ridge took nearly an hour over dirt roads and winding paths. The caravan consisted of 2 rescue center vans, Lily's pickup, and another vehicle carrying equipment for the soft release pen. The mood was tense, but hopeful, like pioneers venturing into unknown territory. When they arrived, sunlight filtered through tall pines, revealing a secluded hollow brimming with ferns and wildflowers. Lily stepped out onto spongy ground, inhaling the scent of pine resin. It felt immediately peaceful, just the kind of place a wildcat might call home. Adrienne and Dr. Kaminsky led the team deeper into the forest, eventually stopping at a fenced enclosure they'd built the previous week. It was roughly half an acre, its interior carefully designed with fallen logs, hiding places, and a small freshwater stream that trickled down from a rocky outcrop. "This will be their domain for the next few weeks," Adrienne explained. "We'll monitor them remotely, replenishing live prey if necessary. Once we see they're hunting effectively and comfortable, we'll dismantle the fence." Lily and Caleb helped carry the bobcat crates inside, setting them in a shaded area near the stream. One by one, Dr. Kaminsky administered a reversal agent for the tranquilizers, ensuring the cats would wake without lingering grogginess. Then everyone stepped back, waiting. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs, excitement and nerves mingling. She knew this was the final leg of the journey for a mother bobcat who had, in one wild night, captured Lily's soul with an unbreakable bond of trust. A hush settled over the makeshift enclosure as everyone waited for the bobcat family to stir. Rays of early morning sun angled down through the dense pine canopy, illuminating swirls of dust motes in the fresh forest air. Lily stood with her arms folded across her chest, her heart thrumming in anticipation. Nearby, Caleb rested a hand on her shoulder, as if sensing the swirl of conflicting emotions inside her. They exchanged a brief glance, both recalling how close the mother bobcat had come to perishing in that barn fire. Now they were on the brink of seeing her return to the wilderness, the place she was meant to live. Adrian quietly directed volunteers to finalize small tasks, checking the perimeter fence, placing motion-activated cameras, ensuring the feeders were correctly positioned if supplemental prey needed to be introduced. Dr. Kaminsky sat on a nearby stump, monitoring the sedated animals from a distance. He had administered the reversal agent minutes earlier, so the bobcats would soon be awakening. The kittens had gone under with relatively little fuss, but the mother bobcat, ever the fighter, had resisted the tranquilizer for a few tense moments. Lily remembered the wrenching sight of her half-lidded eyes, that final flash of defiance before succumbing to the drug's effects. A subtle rustle broke the silence. One of the kittens, smaller than its siblings, shifted within its straw-lined crate. Lily's breath caught. Carefully, Dr. Kaminsky rose and approached, opening the hinged door just a crack. The kitten blinked, dazed and unsteady, then stretched its spindly legs. One by one, the other kittens stirred, letting out groggy mewls. The soft breeze carried those tender sounds to Lily's ears, triggering a wave of affection. She realized she'd never quite gotten over the visceral memory of saving them from the flames. Seeing them here, alive and ready to explore a new life, felt both triumphant and bittersweet. Meanwhile, the mother bobcat slept on, her crate positioned separately. Faint lines of tension etched Adrienne's brow as she observed. "She's taking a bit longer to rebound," she noted quietly, glancing at Dr. Kaminsky. Her system might still be sensitive after the lung injuries and burns from the fire. The vet nodded in agreement, crossing to her crate for a closer look. Lily stepped forward, heart pounding. She wanted to see the mother bobcat's eyes open, to witness that regal fierceness come back into focus. Dr. Kaminsky crouched next to the crate, pressing 2 fingers gently to the bobcat's flank. "Her pulse is steady," he murmured. "Breathing looks fine. Let's give her another minute or 2. True to his assessment, the cat's whiskers twitched, and she emitted a low, soft groan. Lily found herself exhaling in relief. The mother bobcat's ears flicked slightly, as though she were battling through hazy layers of sedation to return to full awareness. The kittens by then had begun to wander. The volunteers had unlatched their crates, allowing the wobbly young bobcats to step onto the grassy ground of the enclosure. They stumbled a bit, mewing in protest, but curiosity quickly overtook any lingering fatigue. Each kitten tested the air, tiny noses quivering as they scented pine needles and damp earth. One swatted at a passing beetle, while another crouched behind a small rock, as though preparing to ambush a sibling. The forest around them seemed to beckon, rich with new smells and textures. At last, the mother bobcat's eyes eased open. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Even half-dazed, the cat's golden gaze shone with unwavering intensity. Dr. Kaminsky and Adrienne exchanged a nod, then opened the crate door. Initially, the bobcat did not move, blinking as if orienting herself in this strange new domain. Her gaze darted around, taking in the fence line, the surrounding trees, and the group of onlookers standing quietly at the enclosure's edge. Then she let out a sound, a low, vibrating chirr that Lily recognized from the rescue center. It was a gentle call, one used to reassure offspring. The kittens perked up, ears swiveling. Each turned toward the mother, stumbling with newfound urgency. The smallest kitten tumbled over its own paws, scrabbling in the grass before regaining its footing. All four hurried to the mother's side, pressing close to her warm fur. Even though she was still shaking off the vestiges of sedation, the mother bobcat lifted her head and nuzzled each kitten in turn. Watching that tender reunion, Lily felt a sting of tears in her eyes. Gradually, the mother bobcat rose on all fours, tail swishing through the grass. She sniffed the air, tense muscles rippling beneath her coat. Though the fence was high and secure, Lily sensed that this was the first step in reintroducing the cat to the freedom she had nearly lost. The bobcat tensed at the sight of the humans and let out a low warning growl. Dr. Kaminsky motioned everyone to retreat further from the fence, giving the family more space. Lily obeyed, even as she yearned to stay near. She reminded herself that giving wild animals room was the ultimate sign of respect. Once the humans had backed away, the bobcat appeared to relax. She padded deeper into the enclosure, heading for a patch of ferns near a smooth boulder. The kittens followed, tripping over vines but displaying that same inquisitive nature Lily remembered from their playful sessions at the rescue center. The mother soon found the stream, dipping her head to lap at the cool water. The kittens gathered in a clumsy row, mimicking her actions. In that simple scene, a wildcat teaching her young to survive, Lily saw the essence of life's resilience. Here was a family that had faced roaring flames, heartbreak and displacement, yet had emerged with unbroken spirits. From the corner of her eye, Lily noticed Frank standing by the enclosure's perimeter, arms folded over his chest. His expression was solemn, yet touched by wonder. "That's the cat I saw that night," he whispered as Lily stepped closer. "And those are the babies she almost died for." Lily gave a slight nod, recalling how Frank had watched from a distance as the barn went up in flames, never imagining that within those walls, a fierce mother bobcat was refusing to abandon her litter. Together, they stood witness to the miraculous second chance unfolding a few yards away. Caleb joined them, carefully setting down a remote camera that would record the family's behavior. He wiped sweat from his brow, looking both relieved and thoughtful. "It's incredible," he said softly, glancing at Lily. "You risked everything for them, and now here they are, stepping back into their world." Lily swallowed hard, remembering the overwhelming heat, the smell of burning wood, and the frantic pounding of her heart as she'd cradled those kittens. If she closed her eyes, she could almost hear the roar of the flames and feel the mother bobcat's gaze locked on hers, a silent, desperate plea for help. Hours passed as the bobcat family acclimated, exploring nooks and crevices within the enclosure. Dr. Kaminsky and Adrian showed Lily and Caleb how they would track the cat's progress: motion sensors, hidden cameras, and an observation blind set up outside the fence. Over time, they would reduce direct human contact to an absolute minimum, ensuring the bobcat retained her natural caution toward people. Each day, someone would check in to supply live prey, a necessary step for teaching the kittens to hunt, while continuing to monitor the mother's respiratory health. Before evening fell, Lily made her way to the enclosure gate one last time. She remained outside, respecting the boundary. Through the chain link, she watched the mother bobcat settle into a nest of moss near the boulder. The kittens piled beside her, eyelids drooping, whiskers twitching as though dreams were already calling. A gentle breeze stirred the canopy, scattering dappled light over their resting forms. Lily smiled. They looked peaceful, safe, and, most importantly, wild. Adrienne appeared at Lily's elbow, a warm expression on her face. "They'll stay here until the little ones are old enough to fend for themselves. Then we'll dismantle the fence in stages." She paused, regarding Lily carefully. "You know, if not for you and Caleb, none of this would be happening right now. That mother bobcat would have perished in the flames, taking her kittens with her. It's not an exaggeration to say you gave them a life they never would have had otherwise." Lily's cheeks flushed with humility. "I couldn't have left them," she whispered. "The way she refused to abandon her babies, I couldn't let them all burn." She felt tears threaten again, but she blinked them away. The mother cat had shown her a depth of devotion she hadn't anticipated, something primal and profound that transcended the usual boundary between human and animal. A pleasant hush draped the clearing as the evening light softened. Lily took one final lingering look at the bobcat family, their fur blending into the forest shadows. In that tranquil moment, she found herself overwhelmed by gratitude. Gratitude that the council had voted for release, that the rescue center's staff had given their all to rehabilitate the cat, and that the farmland community had rallied around the notion of coexistence rather than conflict. At last, Caleb approached, keys jingling in his hand. "Time to go," he murmured. "They've had a big day, and so have we." Lily nodded. Together they returned to the parked vehicles, sharing tired but triumphant smiles. The future of the bobcat family was not fully guaranteed. The wild was fraught with its own dangers, but at least now they had a chance. A fair chance to live as nature intended, beyond fences and cages, beyond the memory of blazing barns, free to roam under the moonlit sky. In the weeks following the bobcat family's arrival at the forest enclosure, Lily found herself visiting less often than she might have wanted. Although the rescue center had installed cameras for remote monitoring, she missed the quiet, intimate moments of observing the mother and her kittens. Whenever she did come by, she stayed outside the fenced perimeter, watching from the observation blind while the mother bobcat led her offspring through rudimentary hunting lessons. Adrienne and Dr. Kaminsky logged notes daily, capturing how the kittens pounced on mice, squirrels, and even the occasional hapless frog. Every new success felt like another step toward independence. Yet Lily was careful to remind herself that the less they saw of humans now, the more truly wild they would remain. As the weeks melted into a month, subtle changes revealed how deeply the mother bobcat had reclaimed her natural instincts. She prowled the enclosure at dawn and dusk, her lithe body nearly invisible among the foliage. The kittens mimicked her every movement, learning to creep low to the ground and freeze at the slightest sound. Sometimes Lily caught glimpses on the recorded footage of the mother standing at the fence line, ears pricked forward, as if testing the boundary that separated her from the greater wilderness. Whenever the camera's infrared picked up activity late at night, it was often the family chasing nocturnal prey. Such footage brought a lump to Lily's throat. The kittens, once so fragile, now possessed an exhilarating spark of raw survival. Meanwhile, Pinecrest found itself in the throes of reconstruction and renewed purpose. Frank's new barn neared completion, thanks to a communal effort that reminded everyone of the town's deep-rooted solidarity. Neighborhood meetings sprouted up to discuss living alongside predators, focusing on sensible strategies rather than fear. Caleb assisted in hosting workshops, teaching locals how to secure livestock pens and adopt nighttime lighting that deterred curious wildlife. While some ranchers remained wary, many had come around after hearing Frank's heartfelt testimony. Stories of the bobcat's rescue no longer stoked panic, but rather inspired a cautious respect for the region's native inhabitants. Lily noticed fewer complaints lodged with animal control. Even Everett Jenkins, the longtime skeptic, installed motion sensor alarms around his property instead of calling for lethal measures. For Lily, the real turning point arrived when Adrienne announced that the time had come to dismantle the soft-release fence. After weeks of careful observation, the mother bobcat had proven her ability to hunt without assistance, and the kittens were growing sleek and confident. On a crisp morning, Lily, Caleb, Adrienne, and a small team gathered at the enclosure's edge with tools in hand. One by one, sections of wire fencing came down, opening the wooded hollow to the broader forest. The Bobcat family watched from a stand of ferns, alert but unafraid. Every clang of metal reverberated through the clearing, and when the final barrier dropped, a hush of awe rippled among the onlookers. The wild had been restored to those who rightfully belonged there. Initially, the Bobcat family remained in that hollow, as though uncertain of how to proceed. The mother prowled the perimeter, sniffing at the air, now free of any man-made boundary. A few times she glanced back at Lily and the others who stood at a respectful distance, hardly daring to breathe. Then came the decisive moment. The mother Bobcat slunk into the shadows of the taller pines, kittens trailing behind in an unsteady line. One hesitant step followed another until the entire family vanished behind a lush screen of foliage. Lily felt her heart twist with a poignant mix of pride and loss. Even though she couldn't see them anymore, she knew they were out there, claiming their birthright of freedom. In the days that followed, motion sensor footage captured fleeting glimpses of the Bobcat family roaming deeper into the forest. Sometimes the kittens appeared on camera, wrestling in sun-dappled clearings or stalking unsuspecting crickets. Other times, the mother was sighted alone, an elegant silhouette moving with stealth through the undergrowth. Lily viewed these videos with a swelling sense of relief. Each sighting was a testament that, despite fire and fear, nature's course had been corrected. No longer confined by fences or threatened by flames, the cats thrived on their own terms. Frank, too, took heart in these updates, often shaking his head in amazement at how a simple act of empathy had reshaped local attitudes. He called it Pinecrest's miracle in the pines. Summer gave way to the crisp chill of autumn, painting the valley in reds and golds. Lily found herself reflecting on how much had changed since that fateful night at the Miller barn. She discovered a deeper purpose in her firefighting work, one that extended beyond extinguishing flames. In small but meaningful ways, she now advocated for living in harmony with the wild. She spoke at a local school's career day, sharing stories of rescue and compassion, urging the next generation to see animals not as threats, but as vital cohabitants. When she'd first joined the volunteer squad, she never imagined she'd be spearheading wildlife coexistence talks. Yet here she was, bridging gaps between farmers and conservationists, finding her voice in uncharted territory. Late one evening, Lily parked her truck near the reconstructed Miller barn, now complete and standing proud against the horizon. She wandered into the quiet fields, remembering the inferno that once devoured these walls. Under the starlight, she felt both gratitude and humility for the remarkable journey that had unfolded since. The Bobcat's unwavering devotion to her kittens had awakened something profound in Lily, an unshakable belief in the power of compassion. Whether confronting flames or bridging divides, she realized every choice to help, every moment of understanding, could spark a chain reaction of hope. High above, constellations shimmered, indifferent yet awe-inspiring. Somewhere in those dark woods beyond, a mother bobcat roamed with her grown offspring, bound to Lily forever by a single act of courage. In that starlit hush, everything felt possible.